Welcome to Confident Growth, the podcast for people who are passionate about productivity and personal growth. Today I have with me one of my dearest old friends, Christine Amour-Levar. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much, Crystal. It's such a pleasure to be here. I was so looking forward to it.
Yes, I always get a infusion of energy from you, Christine. The reason why I picked Christine to come and speak to us is because I cannot think of anybody who is more about productivity and personal growth than you, because you are such a multifaceted person. You are somebody who is a mother of many children.
Four
children.
And one furry one.
And you're also a social entrepreneur. You have worked in the corporate world. You have, raised funds. You're big into philanthropy and everything. You're also an author. So maybe you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure, happy to do that. So once again, thanks for having me, Crystal. So I am a social entrepreneur. I consider myself very much working in social impact. I founded 2 nonprofit organizations that support vulnerable women. We use the power of expeditionary travel to raise awareness and funds for issues that disproportionately impact women, such as violence, economic crisis, climate change. So that's about 50% of my time is spent on those 2 NGOs. I've recently co-founded Investors for Climate. So it's a community of investors actively deploying in climate across 11 cities now. We're scaling. And so our intention with that is to move as much capital as possible to help scale innovative solution in climate tech. I am a mummy. I'm very proud to be a mom. I'm an author, it's true. I published a book a couple of years ago with Penguin Random House called Wild Wisdom, Life Lessons from leading teams on expeditions around the world. And I'm also a board member with nonprofits and some venture capital groups as well.
Wow, that is a whole lot.
Thank you.
Can I double click a little bit on Woman on a Mission?
Sure.
Yeah, because that I think is something that you're really known for, being a trailblazer. So tell us a little bit about Woman on a Mission, like all these places that you go to. What is it about? What motivated you to start this?
Sure. So my passion early on was really sports. I grew up in the Philippines and I played a lot of sports, all sorts of sports. Football actually was my sport. And very early on, my dream was actually to work in sports. So my career took me around the world and I ended up working for Nike in multiple countries, came to Singapore with Nike. And I always wanted to continue to find a way to incorporate sports into giving back and having an impact. And it was only later when I finally moved to Singapore after a few years that I had an aha moment. And I realized that I could do this to help women that didn't have the privileges that I had growing up. And so this is why my co-founders and I set up Women on a Mission almost 12 and a half years ago to take women on expeditions around the world. And now we're leading our 13th expedition in September to Norway, continually raising funds with all-female teams from the Arctic to the Antarctic. And my second NGO, Her Planet Earth, does the same thing, but with more of an environmental focus.
What was one of the most challenging expeditions that you've been on?
So I would say there were 2 very difficult ones. One with Women on a Mission, we did a biking trip across the Danakil Depression of Ethiopia, which is the hottest place on Earth.
Oh my God, how hot is that?
It was 50 degrees Celsius. It's like opening an oven, basically, and biking in that on sulfuric acid and sand was very, very difficult. Most of the team got heat stroke, which is quite a difficult and dangerous condition. And I would say the second one, which was as difficult, but in the completely extreme temperatures to the Ethiopia, was Greenland. We did a fat bike trek across the Arctic Circle, 200 kilometers in the middle of winter. And so in that case, the temperatures went down to minus 40 degrees Celsius, which was very tough on these bikes on different kind of snow, ice, rock. So very difficult, and I probably would never do that again. Never again.
One of your superpowers, Christine, is that you are like my little black book. Like anybody that I need to connect to or know, like whether it's the best hairdresser or whether it's the somebody at certain company that or somebody who's an expert on something, I feel like you just know everyone.
Well, Singapore is quite small. And ultimately, the entrepreneur in us is that if we don't know how to reach this person, we'll know somebody who knows how to reach this person.
Exactly.
Right? So there's always a way to get to the person we need to get to.
I really feel like one of your superpowers is that you are a super connector, which is why I wanted you to come and speak to my audience, because I have been going on for the longest time about how success is not so much like the way we think it is in school is like, you know, what you know, how to do things. But actually, as you go out into the real world, you realize that so much of it is who.
Yes,
like who you can trust, who you can call on, you know, who do you know? And you're somebody who I really admire as, you know, have that ability to be completely yourself, completely authentic in any social situation, and have created such a strong network. Can you give me some of your best of tips on like how to be a super connector like yourself?
It's a great question. First of all, I think you have to approach networking as something that you can enjoy. You shouldn't, you know, if you feel stressed when you start thinking about networking, you have to almost take a step back and say, okay, let's take a break, let's take a breather, and let's look at networking as a wonderful opportunity to help other people. So I actually approach it that way. I think the best networking is actually to try to make other people more successful. So that's the first step. So when you meet someone, when you're at a party or a networking event, you're meeting, of course, you know, you're meeting people, you're learning from them, but ultimately I try to look at it as a way to help them be happier and more successful. And success in itself is an interesting concept because, you know, when we talk about success, a lot of times we talk about, you know, being successful in our careers, maybe even making money. And I actually feel that for me, what is success? Success is leading a life that you are as happy as possible and that you have a bigger impact on the people around you and the world around you. So I think if you start with that concept, then networking is actually really just a tool to try to have a better impact on the world and the people around you. So, you know, one of the best ways to do it is to come with curiosity, humility, and just being yourself, not try to present an image that you want people to see that you are this way, you know? So almost scrap off all this desire to impress people and just say, I'm coming there and I'm coming to learn from the people in the room. So that's number one. So asking questions, being curious, genuinely interested in wanting to know where they're from, why are they here, what do they do, and what can they teach me? You know, I think that's one of the biggest lessons I learned from my dad, because I remember one time when I was growing up and I was living in Manila and we used to go on holiday to France, and I told my dad, I said, you know, Dad, I was speaking to some kids and they didn't even know where the Philippines was on the map, and they were just thinking it was a big jungle and they didn't know anything about our they thought we had a king. And I kind of looked down on those kids. And then my dad said to me, listen, you can't look down on them. They didn't have the chance maybe to travel to that part of the world. And they have so many other things that they can teach you. Maybe they're good at camping. Maybe they've done other things. Maybe they know how to sail. Maybe they know other things about France that you don't know.
Yes.
So why don't you try to learn from these kids? So it really put me back in my place. And I never forgot what he said. So networking is exactly like that. What can you learn from people? What can you do to help them be more successful? And if you have that mentality, then your network is going to grow by leaps and bounds, and you being successful will come because they're also successful. I always say we rise by lifting others. I really believe that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. And I think like it's more than just like tactics. It's more like a mindset.
It's a mindset. It's a mindset. Is, you know, people are human beings from the janitor to the big CEO. All of them deserve respect and kindness and generosity. And so if you meet one in the lift that's, you know, a very, you know, just a regular person, you don't know his story or her story. You don't know if they come from the hospital where their mother's dying, or you don't know if their child has just had an accident. You don't know anything, but you can also learn from them and just be kind to them.
So if you were like meeting somebody in the lift, I'm going to ask about making small talk, because a lot of my followers have said, I'm so awkward at small talk. You know, now I think with the younger generation, they, maybe because of COVID or something, a lot of them feel like the social muscles weren't really developed.
And they're spending so much time online, right?
Yes,
as well.
on devices.
Gaming, you know, then you forget how to even socialize. We were talking with my teenage boy about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think for us, like, you know, two of us, we are quite social. We are like quite comfortable, outgoing, you know, we just make conversation. But lately I've had a lot of questions from my audience like, what do you talk about? Like, how do you make small talk? Like, what kind of conversations would you recommend that you have with like somebody you don't know at all at a cocktail party? Like, how do you start?
I think I would start by being aware, first of all. As you know, awareness is so important. If you walk into a lift and if you read the person and the body language is like, don't bother me and, don't talk to me, then you also have to respect that.
Yes,
it's not just, because I want to exercise my small talk skills, So I do think that awareness is being aware of the people around you and feeling the energy around you too. And sometimes you'll walk into a networking event and there'll be a couple of people like shyly standing aside. Sometimes it's okay to maybe then they'll be so relieved that you talk to them, right?
Yes.
So you're also breaking the ice in some way.
Yeah.
I think start with a question, genuinely kind question, or how have you been? Do you live in Singapore? I just noticed, something about, your bag or what you're wearing. And be genuinely attentive to what they are, what they're doing, how they're standing, and the energy they're putting out there. And so those will be the clues on how to start a conversation.
Absolutely. I'm going to overshare a little story.
Tell me.
I'm going to share one of my peak Christine memories. Okay.
Oh my God. Which one?
This is like when we first knew each other and we were quite new to each other.
Yes.
And I remember I was going through this divorce, right? So I just was going through this divorce and I was kind of slowly starting to tell people about this divorce. And every one of my friends that I told, I'm getting divorced, and because I had 2 little kids, everyone was a bit like, oh no, and oh, how's it going to be? And or not knowing what to say. But I remember we were at this F1 podium party. With, you remember that?
Yeah.
And I, was sharing with you. I said, Christine, I'm getting divorced. And you said, oh, fantastic. You were like, second marriages are the best. You're like, oh, this is a new phase of life. And you were just we had so much positivity and energy. But also you were not afraid to be you. Yeah. And at that point of time, I was like, a lot of people do this thing where they try to say the PC thing, the politically correct or whatever. But something that I always admire about you is that you are just always you.
I'm kind of natural.
You're very natural.
Sometimes I notice that people get a bit surprised how honest
yes, you're
and
very
direct
frank.
I am.
Yes.
But I also think it's a power.
Yes.
Because suddenly you go deep and into a conversation with someone, even when you just met them. It doesn't mean that you have to share too many intimate details. Yes. But just looking them in the eye and being honest and just open about questions or comments, it actually wakes people up. I know it because I have that effect sometimes. Yes. People look at me like, whoa, it's like, wow, we're intimate right away, in an intimate conversation.
Yes.
But I don't know how else to be,
You're very original. And I must say is that ability to, by being so candid, people immediately feel close to you.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that sometimes I have had to pull back a little bit when I'm confronted with people who are very reserved and who have, very private barriers in front of them. So, for example, in the French culture, it's not like the Filipino culture where we're very warm and open and it's kind of easy to converse with each other, at a party first time. But in France, actually, you have to be a little bit more careful. Yeah. And you have to be a bit slow and just break the ice more gently. So I've learned also to do that in other ways. But generally, people are the same underneath.
It's true.
After when you peel out the layers, right?
Yeah, it's absolutely
that's what I
true.
feel. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we got along. From the start, I feel I can talk to you about anything. Yeah. And even though we don't see each other very often, but when we do, it's just I can share anything with Christine. And I remember, this is another story. There was this time, and I must credit you with my recent weight loss. Everybody was asking me, this year, oh, you lost a lot of weight and and all of that. And I remember having this dinner party at your place. And normally, this is why I love you also, I would just say something like, I'm feeling very annoyed. I've put on weight during COVID and all of that. And normally everyone says the same thing. It's no, you look fine or whatever. But when I said it to you, you were like, what you need to do? You were like, you need to do this thing. You need to stop doing intermittent fasting. It is so good, but not in an unhealthy way.
Just
you were
my tips.
You were very health conscious, but you're such a fit and strong person.
I try, but at the moment I actually put on weight, so
yeah. But for you, it was more what I appreciated was you just kind of gave me advice, but from a very frank and very sincere way, and it was really great because I think that not a lot of us have friends who can actually just
Tell
know,
you honestly,
cut the crap.
Yeah.
And just be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm dealing with this too. This is what you can do. And you're
amazing like that though. You're very much like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why we get along.
Yeah.
Because like we're not afraid to see when there's something, and then we can just give you like the frank feedback. Well, a lot of people will be like, very polite and like, you know, I want to say the polite thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true. And I think that's, for me personally, I think that's the best way to be, especially if the intention is good. You see what I mean? So I think being frank and all that can sometimes backfire, as you know, like people are, oh, I shocked this person, you know, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But I think ultimately if the intention is good, you know, and kind, then generally you'll be on the right path.
Yes. I want to change tacks a little bit. Like we have predominantly quite a strong audience of female leaders and professionals. And like one of the topics that's very dear to my audience is, you know, how do you thrive in a male-dominated environment? And that's something that you're no stranger to. You've really worked with government organizations and like at the highest corporate levels and everything. And you have the ability to walk into a room. And I never see you kind of like think, oh, I'm just a woman. I see you, in fact, like somebody who is like so proud of this difference and really like, can you share with some of your tips for women who want to overcome that mindset?
So yes, I'm very feminine and I'm proud of being feminine, but I also have a masculine side. We all have feminine and masculine side. And it's only until recently actually that I feel that my life has been more balanced in that way. So you know, growing up, I started my career, I think I told you, in sports. So very male dominated, Nike in the US, you know, lots of sports jocks. And you know, I got right into it, you know, lunchtime playing football with the guys. And my bosses, a lot of them were men. And it was fine, you know, American, very straightforward work ethic. And then my philanthropic work has been women supporting women. So for many years, the last 12 and a half years, I've been surrounding myself with strong women, going on expeditions, raising funds for vulnerable women, working with charity partners, often led by women. So my whole world was all women, which I love, to be honest. And I love being around women. I just get so much energy from being around amazing women. And then more recently, during the pandemic, I had a pivot in my career where I got more involved in investments, sustainable investment, venture capital, and that's mostly men. So my Investor for Climate group is 80% men. In the VC space, it's like 90% men. Some of my board roles, I'm still one of the few women on the board. So now there's more balance. And I do feel as I get older, I love my maturing femininity. And I do feel that our presence in the room changes the tone and the energy for the better. I really feel that when I walk into a boardroom and there are only one or two women, I feel that a lot of senior men who are confident, and there are many allies out there, are just waiting to be tapped on the shoulder to be asked, what can I do to support and help? And sometimes you just have to be a bit more prescriptive in terms of what I need. I'd love your help with this. I would like you to introduce this woman to this. I'd like you to support me to do this. And honestly, the feedback has been amazing. I think it does help if you have credibility and you have put hard work behind some of the initiatives so that, you know, it's not, you know, built on nothing, you know? So they respect you as well. But when you give them a very nice way of asking them to support you in some capacity, either through a testimonial or an introduction or recommendation, men have been incredible. And I think we can do more of that. Us women can tap into our male networks to help us succeed and to help other women succeed.
Yeah, amazing. So when you you know, are having these conversations with men to ask them specifically to support something, like what are the most common requests that you would ask and task them with?
Definitely try to bring another woman on the board. So I will always put forward women that I think are deserving and capable, and have them introduce them to their network or to, you know, peers in the company that they need to get their approval for, you know. Recommendations for sure, and actually even be quite prescriptive in how to do it, you know. And they don't mind, you know, you do it in a nice way. You say, we know you're very busy, you know, I'd love your support, and this is why I want the support. Also be very clear about, you know, because men function like that, you know, you have to be very clear
clear with the ask.
The ask. And generally, you know, they're great, and I often praise them them after. Oh, that's amazing. You're really the best.
They need to affirm. Everyone needs the affirmation.
In a way, I treat my
especially
husband
men.
the same way, you know.
Yes,
like,
we always
right?
talk
It's
about
like that,
it.
right? When you want them to do something for the family, for the house, you can ask, but you cannot nag, right? But you have to ask a certain way, and then you have to praise.
Yes.
It's the same thing with children, with husbands, with dogs, with men
Yes.
in general.
Yes.
And then, it's great because we need to bring them along on the journey, right?
Yep.
In terms of more equity, with more supporting more women in leadership, just diverse. Even in the climate space, we don't have enough women founders getting support as well. I just did a talk in London where it was about bridging the gender gap in climate tech investing, you know, which is even more difficult than just in tech in general.
Wow.
And actually, a lot of the men showed up at the event, wanted to learn, wanting to support, which was really encouraging. So we just need to keep the movement going, and
That
encourage
is so
them.
encouraging. I'm
Yeah,
so
it's
glad
good.
to hear.
I'm enjoying it. So
We need more strong ambassadors, for diversity and inclusion like yourself.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to also ask you, you have, like I mentioned, 4 children.
Yes.
How do you, and you have such a full life and career. Did you ever struggle with, balancing the family life as well as the work's demands?
For sure. So actually, when I was a mother of 2, working for Nike in Singapore, I found it very difficult. It was pre-COVID, remember?
Yeah.
So there was no work from home at all. It was
Yeah.
all in the office. And then marketing events on the weekends.
Yeah.
The kids were really young. I was always running to the French school, and I was late for the PTA meetings and always apologizing. And,
Yeah.
having that guilt as a
Yes.
young mom. And then, of course, I was a single mom as well when I arrived. And so that was very, very difficult for me. I was struggling. My mom would fly in and try to stay with me when I had business trips and all that. And of course, I worried about my children's future. Here they were very, 5 and 3 years old, and I was separated, getting a divorce. And I had a boyfriend at the time, so it's not my current husband, Steve. I had a boyfriend, actually a very serious boyfriend, and I still wasn't sure if what was going to happen between us, if I wanted to marry him or not. So lots of doubts and yeah, a lot of insecurities and struggles, and work was difficult. I started with Nike in the US, which was very exciting at the world headquarters. It was very different dynamic in a country organization. So difficult times. And
How did you get through it?
so little by little, I just persevered. And then I also met Steve, my husband,
Yes.
who's been an amazing partner.
He is amazing.
He's an entrepreneur. He's so loving to the kids. He's
Yes.
from the beginning, he was a wonderful stepfather. And he's the one who encouraged me to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because he said, wow, you're working, you never see your own kids. He would be at home with his own 2 stepkids waiting for me to come home. And then he said, listen, I'm sure there are other things that you might want to do. I want to support you to be an entrepreneur if that's what you want to do. And he encouraged me. And I did that. I started, actually, I had a boutique for a while at Wisma Atria. Then I started my nonprofits. And he's been with me every step of the way. And then we had 2 kids together, of course. So that support was invaluable. Steve really understanding me, pushing me, supporting me, having that maturity of, having 2 stepkids right away in his life. My ex-husband living upstairs because we lived in the same building for 6 years.
I must say, Christine, that is one of the most impressive things about you being able to, honestly blend these 2 families, have your ex-husband just upstairs in the same building.
Yeah.
Everyone I know, we're like, only Christine.
Oh my
can
God.
pull
My
this
mom
off.
just jokes. She says that I'm like a Chinese man. I have Tai Tai number 1 upstairs and Tai Tai number 2 with me. My mom is so cute. She said, I should have done that.
No, but I love that you really have this whole ecosystem. Like I said,
Yeah.
you're a super connector even at home.
Yeah, it's a village, bringing
it's
up
a
children,
village.
as you know.
And one thing that I always notice is that you're always having dinner parties. I feel so bad, Christine. You invite me to so many dinner parties,
Don't
and I feel
say
like
that. You've
oh my-
invited me too.
Yeah, I know, but like for every 1 dinner party I have, you've had 10.
But we love hosting. We do love hosting. So hosting is something I grew up with.
Yes,
So when
you're
I was
so good at it.
in the Philippines, my dad used to cook with the support of our helpers and all that, and my mom used to set the table. So it's actually exactly the same at home. So I set the table,
Yes.
then Steve and the girls cook.
Yes.
And we love to host.
Yes.
It just makes me really happy to have people at home and. Yeah, and that's allowed me to get closer to my friends in Singapore, and I love doing it. So
You are the glue that holds so much of our social circle
Steve
together.
really does the planning for the dinner, though, I have to say.
Yeah. I think one thing that I admire about your relationship as well is like Steve's such a great partner. Like he is the cook. He like, many of the dinners we go to, he's the one that's like making the food and serving it and everything. And like, would you say that a large part of like a successful woman is also like partners?
I think so, because if it's not okay in your relationship, it's really hard to be fully present in your career, I feel, and if you're struggling at home, and I remember because I struggled through, and it was difficult at Nike. I struggled at work at Nike because I had so much unhappiness at one point. I didn't know what was going to happen, or I didn't know about the future of my kids. So I think once you have a strong, solid relationship, it allows you to go full out in so many other things that you want to do in your life and your dreams. That having that partner that you can count on, which you can't take for granted, because as you know, marriage is not easy.
Yes.
So I think relationships, marriage, having that strong partner at home allows you to do so many other things that you want to achieve and go after in terms of your career, your dreams, whatever they may be. If you have that solid base, then you have that security in a way, and so for me that's been invaluable. And then of course support at home as well, with the helpers who you've met when you've come, and one has been with me 18 years, the other one has been with me 17 years. They've helped me bring up my 4 kids. They're my arms, and everything. I couldn't have done it without them, that's for sure.
Every time I'm at your house, I feel like I'm in a village. You have your titas, they're not like helpers. They're like your family.
They're like my family. They're like my kids also, I call them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, it's just like a happy blended family. Like, and I know it's not easy because being in a divorce situation, with blended families as well, I know it's not easy.
It's not easy.
There's a lot of tensions. There's always like, whatever. It's just a lot of dynamics at play. But
it's all about the relationships, right? There's so many relationships when the more kids you have in the family as well.
Absolutely. And also like now our kids are teenagers and like young adults, they're around the same age. I must say for me, this has been one of the most challenging times as a parent. I didn't know it was going to be this hard. I thought like when they're young and they're not sleeping through the night, that was the hardest part. But only recently with the teenage years that I realized that now there's a lot of things I can't control.
That's right.
Who they spend time with, what they do outside of the house, all the things that could go wrong if they mix around with bad company and like and especially with boarding school and everything. So like from an experienced parent like yourself, like what are those like biggest parenting lessons you learned?
Gosh. So, my 2 older ones are in London now. Yeah. So they're 24 and 22. And they're doing well. One is working already for the last 2 years for the Financial Times. Malcolm is at university after doing national service in Singapore.
Yes, I saw.
They're, responsible.
He's an officer, wasn't he?
He was officer at SCDF. And he's now doing an internship at StoneX Commodities Trading in London this summer. And he's got 1 more year of university. He's the captain of the football team of Queen Mary. I mean, they're really on their way, those 2. So when I look at them, I think, okay, I must have done okay.
Yes.
And then I have 2 teenagers at home that we're going through all the teenager issues again, all over again.
Yes.
And sometimes I do call on my bigger kids to call the little ones and say, we call them little ones, even though they're huge now, to give their own advice, and it helps having gone through it once. But of course, there are even more, challenges now with social media.
Yeah.
I heard about, this whole vaping thing in schools, which is so scary.
Yeah.
Alcohol, at an early age.
Self-harm,
self-harm,
like all of this.
Mental health, gaming, anything. There's so many things and you want to protect your kids, but of course you can't. So last night, actually, what we did with Steve is we got a film called, it's called Screenagers. It was done in the US, and it's about the addiction that comes with screen time, social media, drugs, marijuana, vaping, and all that. And it was a documentary with real young adults and teenagers who have gone through these challenges and these addictions. And then we had a discussion at the table after, because it's really something that you need to talk to your children about. And we're still learning, because everything's changed from when we were teenagers. I think the key, honestly, is communication.
Yes.
Number one is just keep being present and talking to your children, but also talking with the intention to listen, because a lot of us, will tend to dictate, right?
Yes.
I do that all the time, and I have to hold myself back and have, some of my teenagers speak to me and then maybe repeat what they said. Is this what you meant? Did I get this right? So that they really know that you're trying to listen to them and understand what they're saying to you. And I think patience has been really difficult for me. I'm not a very patient person. I want everything done yesterday.
Yes.
So I still need to work on patience. So I would say those would be the two, the communicating. Of course, always making sure that they know that you love them, because sometimes we say, oh yeah, of course they know that I love them. But, being really consistent in showing love in different ways, not just saying that I love you, but showing and doing things for them that they know and are confident of the love of the parent. Because I think for me, growing up, I think even though my dad was somebody who was a French commando, he went through war in Algeria, he had PTSD from that, and he had a very short temper and would often explode in his temper. But he would always apologize, and I always knew that he loved me. And I think as a teenager, I forgave a lot of these temper issues because I knew he loved me.
Yes.
So knowing that your parents love you, and not all teenagers and children feel that their parents love them, because sometimes they don't even have enough time for them.
Yeah.
And so the biggest show of love sometimes is actually making time for them, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's really the key for me, is for them to understand that, yes, mommy or daddy are busy, but sometimes they will stop everything and really focus on me.
Yes.
And I know that they love me, because that love oftentimes is the source of a lot of insecurity if it's not there, and then communication, as I said, having those conversations, asking them, being present, spending time with them.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. I mean, being a parent is so hard.
It is.
And I like you, I wish my mom had said that it was that hard. Even when I was a young mom, it was hard. But the truth is, I always tell my kids, I'm not perfect. I'm your mom. I'm trying to do my best, and so I make mistakes. So and also saying sorry when you make a mistake, because a lot of parents don't say sorry because they're like, I'm a parent, I shouldn't be saying sorry to you. The old generation never said sorry, right? I mean,
that's right.
My mom is Filipina Chinese, right?
Yes.
In the Chinese culture, the Chinese mom doesn't say sorry.
Oh, never.
So my mom was like that too, and my grandma was like that. But I actually think that sometimes if you say it really honestly and say, I made a mistake. I lost my temper with you. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. Mommy is just doing her best. I think if you say that with your heart, it goes a long way.
Especially if you're authentic and you're sincere, which you are. Which you always are.
No, I mean, parenting is the most beautiful thing that's happened to me in my life. And it's just hard sometimes.
Of course. Yeah, I know. I totally get it. It's that, my spiritual teachers, they used to say to me, you can go to an ashram, you can go to a retreat, you can climb a mountain, you can join a monastery, but nothing in life will ever prepare you spiritually for the lessons of being a parent.
And any success you have in your life, if you don't bring up your kids well, it doesn't matter. I told them that last night. I said, all the successes that mommy can have, if I don't bring you up well, as kind, honest, good intentioned people, what's it for? You're my biggest life project. I told them. So they understand how much they mean to me, I hope. And it's not over until even 24, 25. They still need you.
I totally agree.
So, but it's different. Like my relationship with my eldest now is really wonderful. Yasmin is 24. She's a young woman. She shares her what's happening with the dating world, with her career, dealing with her boss. And I love that. It's a wonderful relationship.
I was just talking to my friend Rachel the other day, and we had a fireside chat together, and I don't even remember saying this piece, but when we were having lunch, she said, this thing that you said in the fireside chat really struck me. And I was like, what did I say? And she said, you said, I don't think anyone can call themselves a success if they failed with their kids.
It's true.
And I really felt that way because, to me, there's been many, in my career, I have this sense of super confident. I have no doubt, for whatever strange reason, it's if I work hard, I can do this.
Yeah.
I don't have that same confidence with my kids.
Because you can't force them to do exactly what you want. And that's what's so frustrating,
That's
right?
If
you could just push the button and do everything and do all the hard work and bake them perfectly, it doesn't always happen like that, because they're human beings and they have their own, insecurities, hang-ups, needs. They all have different needs.
For sure.
And that's what's so hard, is that, and sometimes it's just simple as doing something with them, an activity, even if you don't enjoy it, because it's important to them.
Yes, exactly.
And as I said, even making sure they understand that you love them and that you're willing to stop everything for them.
Yeah.
And that's also challenging for us busy people. You
Yes.
know, I'm always
Yes.
too busy, but I actually schedule stuff now with my kids all the time, you know.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Like with my son, like one thing I always used to say in the past is like, oh, you know, it's not quantity of time, it's quality of time. But as I grow older, I realize that it's not true. It's actually both.
It's both.
It's both. You have to spend the quality time. But now, like those things that last time I used to like maybe outsource or delegate to other people, I realize that he likes it when I do it. So yesterday, like or day before yesterday, I find myself going to Far East Plaza to help him tailor his shirts, sitting with him during his haircut. He doesn't need me to sit with him,
but they love it.
He enjoys it.
Yeah.
It brings him joy to see like mommy is personally taking my clothes to the tailor,
not just the helper,
not
or
just the help.
else.
And honestly, I used to be everything is about efficiency. So like my PA can do this, my helper can do this, But at the end of the day, then like I remembered my daughter and my son saying to me like, "What the hell? Like you know, like is the are you just outsourcing everything?" And I realized that
outsourcing. I love it.
but it's like sometimes those ordinary things that like sometimes we have to take off the CEO hat and realize that they need a mother and they need somebody who's like doing the mundane things. So like, just like, oh, mommy, I lost my bag. And can you help me like, go and make or find it or, my SIM card or something like that. Of course, like there's boundaries. At some stage, they need to grow up.
Yeah, thank God the husbands are also good
Thank
at this
God,
stuff.
thank God my husband does that sort of stuff. But lately, I've realized that, just like you, I need to spend this very precious time because they're growing up so fast and they will have their own family soon. They will have their own like adventures and everything. But like while they still need me, I better help, by bloody hell, be there for them.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it goes so fast, right? So Steve and I would joke that, okay, the youngest has only 3 more years of high school. And then after that, we're going to travel even more. And then he said to me, hey, you're saying it like it's 3 years of like, we have to do time still, like jail time. But the truth is it's not. It's like, it's not much, much
it's
more.
Not much at all.
And we have to enjoy it. So being present with them and doing things, even if they're little things, but they're important to them, makes a whole difference.
Absolutely. Well, Christine, it's always a pleasure to speak to you. I want to know as we end up our conversation, because you're a busy woman. I know you are running off to another networking.
Yes, I am actually.
That's why we call you the superconnector. But are there any parting words of wisdom that you could, or personal motto that you have that you could share with all our, aspiring, followers who want to be as empowered and as successful as you?
I would only say that don't underestimate the power that you have to impact the world for the better. And this is a big sentence in a way, but it's true. A lot of us, especially people who are working in big corporations and have very specialized jobs, a lot of times they feel that they have no power to really impact in a way, they don't have a nonprofit and all that. But the truth is you don't need to start a nonprofit. You don't need to, quit your job to actually have an impact. There are many ways to do it within your own family, community, your corporation, taking the lead, asking questions, helping another colleague. You can have multiple positive impacts through your life by just trying to have that intentionality at the heart of what you're doing. And I think that's the biggest point, because we're here for a reason. We're only here for a limited time on this earth, right? So can't we not try to have a better impact, all of us, on people around us?
Thank you so much for that, Christine. You have really inspired me and touched me with your authenticity, inspired me with your ability to create change around you, and also with your candor. I love whenever we're going to be together because I know I'm going to get advice or perspectives from you that I wouldn't get from anyone else. So
we got to hang out more, Kristen.
Yes, definitely. I missed you
thanks
too.
for having me. I know we've been trying to schedule this for a while, but I'm glad we finally got it done.
Me too. We're very privileged to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. You've been watching Comfort and Growth, the podcast for people who are passionate about productivity and personal growth with the one and only superconnector, superwoman, Christine Amour-Levar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Crystal.
See you, everybody. Bye.